launch towers for Starship, probably by sometime next year. So we're aiming to have the first Cape launch tower and launch system operational around the middle of next year. And that'll be important for launch azimuths that are sort of fly over land. So I think what we should probably expect is that we do the development launches here, test anything new here, build the rockets, and then probably most of the operational launches would be from the Cape. So this year we're planning to build another roughly 6 boosters and ships, and that production rate will increase a lot next year. That's why we're building the giant factory. Ultimately, we'll need to build a lot more ships than boosters, especially for Mars, because you'll actually want to use the ship, take apart the ship and use it for raw materials on Mars, because the ship materials will be so valuable. Most of the ships you wouldn't want to bring back. You'd want to just use them for raw materials. Eventually, we will want to bring ships back, and I think we want to give people the option of coming back because they're more likely to want to go if there's some option of coming back. But I think most of the people that go to Mars will probably never come back to Earth. So, and we'll need to ramp production to pretty high numbers. Like, I think ultimately probably a ship multiple ships per day, basically. And then next year we're aiming to demonstrate ship-to-ship propellant transfer. It's hard to make this not look a little bit naughty, because it's 2 ships connecting and doing a fluid transfer. It's just what it is. But this is actually a very important step on going to Mars, because you need to get the ship to orbit and then do orbital refilling, kind of like aerial refueling, and that's really you'll need about 5 or 6 refilling missions for every one mission that goes to Mars. So roughly 5 to 1. So, and this will also be very important for the Artemis program for the NASA to get back to the moon. So we'll want to have a ship that is, well, it's going to be a specialized ship for the moon, like this. So the moon, obviously, there's no mechazilla, so we need landing legs. And you don't need a heat shield, and you don't need flaps, because there's no atmosphere. So the moon ship would be specialized. Now ultimately, I think we want to build a moon base Alpha, and have a permanently occupied base on the moon. Like, that would be super exciting. And so you'd have a bunch of ships that are specialized for going to and from the moon, but they never come back to, they never land back on Earth. They just would dock with propellant tankers to get orbital refilling. So in terms of performance, we've made dramatic progress on every level for Starship. It's remarkable that you can see the Raptor engines and how it has evolved from, optimistically 185 tons to 280, and I think ultimately the booster engines will aim to get the booster engines over 330 tons of thrust, which would mean 10,000 tons of total thrust at liftoff. So, and then the Raptor 3 also will not need a heat shield. So Raptor 3 looks very simple, and it is actually simplified in a lot of ways. But a lot of the complexity is hidden because we have integral cooling channels in many parts of the engine that don't exist in Raptor 2. So in order to not have a heat shield, it has to be very resilient. But that is actually what Raptor 3 would look like. Raptor 3 looks like it's missing a bunch of parts, but actually those parts have either been deleted or they've been integrated into the system, and like I said, with integral cooling channels. And where you need secondary plumbing, the secondary plumbing has also been integrated into the pump and into the chamber jacket, and yeah, so it's much simpler. Well, yeah, it's actually extremely difficult to build Raptor 3, but it will be easy to integrate and will have higher performance and lower total mass, and be more reliable. So. Well, that can go on for a while. So I find it interesting to look at if you look at the flame tail on Starship and how long it is. It's a very long flame tail, which is due to the fact that the chamber pressure, well, it's just outputting a lot more gas at a higher velocity. But I think the flame tail is like maybe 1,000 feet long. It's like more than twice the length of the rocket. And that will actually get, as we increase the thrust, that will get longer. So, yeah. And inevitably, the rocket grows in height. So Starship 2, we're aiming for, like currently Flight 3 would be around 40 or 50 tons to orbit. So the current design, Starship 2 will be over 100 tons. And then Starship 3 will be over 200 tons. Yeah, it's going from around 7,000 tons thrust to over 8,000. But I think we'll end up ultimately with more than 10,000 tons of thrust, probably 7,000 or 8,000 tons of liftoff mass, and at least 10 meters taller. We'll see. Tends to grow. Yeah, exactly. So it probably grows a bit more than that, even really. So if you look at Falcon 9, we're not going to do the length to diameter of Falcon 9. That would be crazy. But Falcon 9 is a very long rocket, so I suspect it'll probably get a bit longer than this, but at 200 tons per flight, fully reusable, that is pretty incredible. And yeah, this will be on the order of 500 feet tall. And then there's thousands of design improvements here. So. I mean, I think maybe one of the most profound things is Starship 3 will cost less per flight than Falcon 1. So that's the difference between if you've got a fully reusable rocket or an expendable rocket. The fully reusable rocket with low-cost propellant and autogenous pressurization actually costs less than a tiny expendable rocket. So, and it'll do, like I said, Falcon 1 is about half a ton to orbit. The Starship 3 will be 400 times more payload for less than the cost of a Falcon 1. Ultimately, I think we might be able to get the cost per flight to Earth orbit down around $2 million or $3 million. So these are sort of unthinkable numbers. Nobody ever thought that this was possible, but we're not breaking any physics to achieve this. So this is within the bound, without breaking physics, we can do this. So the Mars missions are 2 years apart, or 26 months.